So, is this thing on? That's always my question. So I was up at roughly about 2:18 this morning, and normally I would not do these kind of videos because they don't get the views, but I said, why not? So Shields Media did a video that is like totally blown up, and I'm going to leave a link in the description below for you guys about why he drives a 25-year-old car and is debt-free. You guys know I appreciate everybody's perspective. And of course, like I always do, I want to inject some different alternative perspectives that may or may not shape the way that you think about car payments. And in this video, we're going to talk about that. What's up, guys? My name is Chris, and welcome to The Breakdown, where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, as always, welcome back. So, like I said, I don't really do these videos, and this format is probably going to be as straightforward and non-edited as possible, as an FYI. If you want that, I ain't doing it today. Unc is tied. But the point of the video for Shields Media is basically of why he does not have a car note. And his reasons were very valid. And I think that I understand what he was trying to get across, which was basically don't do things for other people, but do them for you. And I want to tie that in, but also more importantly about cars and our relationship with car payment, as well as why people hate them so much and what you can do about it if you're considering getting a car or you don't know if you want to do cash or you want to do financing. It's going to be a very straightforward ride, but just hear my points out and give me a chance. If you beat me up in the comments, I will understand. But with that being said, stick around and stay tuned because you are now watching The Breakdown. Okay, so here's the thing. So talking about car payments and non-car payments. So I'm going to talk about the start of his video and try to give you some enlightenment on what the entire point was. You can watch it for yourselves. I'll leave a link in the description below. The point was that he is able to use his money and leverage it in a way that he enjoys by either investing or, paying for his wife's car cash. And there were some other points that were made, but the biggest thing was that it works for him. And I want to talk about our relationship as people with car payments and to give some different perspective. So the first thing is that I'm going to have some transparency here. I am never buying a cash car ever again. Never doing it.
It's a no for me, dog.
And I've talked about this a few times, but I had an Acura, and the Acura that I had was only like 12 years old when I bought it. I bought it for like $14,000 straight cash, big balling. And I thought I was doing something because I was like, oh shit, this is going to be nice. I'm not going to have a car payment. And it was an Acura TL Type S manual. So I was like, oh shit, I'm going to be winning. I spent $6,000 keeping it up. I didn't realize that because it was such low mileage that everything had basically rotted. And it was in great condition, but everything that had been sitting, the cars are meant to be driven. They're meant to perform. They're meant to do things. And that car in particular was so low mileage that a lot of the pieces rotted out. Now, it could be argued that I just didn't know what I was doing, and it could have just been me being a little more OCD, which I do have from time to time. But the reality is that I did not like the concept of my car breaking down. And given all of those things, I still ended up selling the car. I have had car payments, I've financed, I've leased, I've done cash, I've done rentals, I've done it all. And I realized that our relationship with car payments is, it sounds good to not have a car payment. It sounds noble, it sounds presentable, and it sounds impressive to people that you're not in debt like the rest of society. But ultimately, the thing that I learned from that experience was that I'm going to get rid of this car anyway, so it doesn't make sense for me to pay it off. And the bigger proponent is that when people buy cars and they talk about car payments, I've noticed a trend that they just want to get it done. And there's an anxiety about paying off a car because I also realize that people don't value cars in the same capacity. But to bust a bubble, some things just don't make sense. And I do understand that everybody cannot afford a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 payment, but somehow we as society are still doing it. It's not making sense to me. And I think a lot of times when people buy their cars, they buy them as a reaction not as a planned activity. And one thing that has always helped me as someone who's had multiple cars is I've done two things. I've used incentives, and the biggest thing that I've always done is think about what I want next and understand the value of what I'm buying. That's a level of intentionality that most people don't have. Most people, when they do have to buy a car, they buy it because it's a necessity to get them from A and B. But it always sounds good to say, oh, you should buy a $4,000 car and save your money. The reality is that on Auto Trader alone, and I looked this up probably last week, there is less than 100,000 cars on the market right now for less than $9,000, as opposed to there's almost 4 times that of anything between $10,000 and $25,000. The other thing to remember is that most people are financing their cars, financing a 3 to 5 year old car for 6 to 7 years. As always, when you do the math, it equates to 10 to 12 years before you pay the car off. Well, around that time, you more than likely will need to buy a new one anyway, especially if you have not taken care of it. And quite literally anything can happen to your car as you're driving it, whether it's brand new or whether it's 5, 10, 15 years old. Quite literally anything can happen. And most people are not prepared to take on the deductible that's going to be required for the insurance. Most people are not prepared for the possibility of having to replace their car and put down a down payment, especially if they have bad credit. And most people are not prepared for the event of a major repair. Even if you do have a cash car, you still have to pay the taxes on it up front. You also have to pay the insurance. And the insurance tends to be higher because the safety features are not as relevant today as they were back then. And the benefits over time don't really outweigh the transaction itself. It is more of a short-term solution. It is not necessarily a long-term proposal. Every single time you are signing the paperwork for your car to get a loan, you should be planning not only how you're going to pay on it, but how you're going to pay it off. There's so many different strategies that I don't think people understand about car buying. And it always blows my mind when I ask people, once you pay the car off, what are you going to do? Because they think that the car note ends once the loan ends, and that's not how any of that works. And I wanted to hop on this mic today because I wanted to give you some alternative perspective about cars and the relationship that you have with car payments. To keep it 100, to keep it a bean, if you don't value cars, you want to keep your car note as cheap as possible. If you value a nice car, you can get a decent car note that you can handle. If you want a really nice car, understand that that is going to come with some level of sacrifice and compromise because your budget only stretches so far. I think that we have to reevaluate our relationship with cars and car payments because unfortunately wages are not increasing like they should, and car companies surprisingly are not the people who control used car prices. That is completely dictated by the used car market and dealerships. And the new cars, manufacturers do their best to keep cars as affordable as possible, even though you guys don't see it that way. And I may get some comments, I may get beat up. I'm okay with that. I'm very okay with that. And I think that as we talk about what we want out of our lives and what we want from a car, do you want experience? Do you want necessity? Do you want utility? What do you want? And that becomes the bigger conversation of what makes the most sense. I believe that Shields Media's intention was to give you the understanding that none of this is relevant in terms of what other people think. And as long as you enjoy what you're driving, but it absolutely grinds my gears when people try to dictate and tell you how to save and invest your money when, like I said before, 76% of Americans live check to check. 24% of people know how to do it. The other 76% of people don't know what they're doing. And that calls into question the perception we have of money and the relationship that we have with money. And ultimately, I think car payments are not the villain. I think that the value we attach to the car payment is the actual villain. So I'm going to say this with my whole chest is that if you want that nice car, get it, do it intelligently, and plan for your next one. If you want a cheap car, that's okay. Just plan for it and do it intelligently. There is not enough Hondas, Toyotas, Nissans, Kias, whatever to go around the world for everybody to pay outright. It is unrealistic, and it is something that honestly is going to put a lot of people out of business, considering there's a lot of people who are finance workers, there's a lot of people who are car makers, and as I've said before, if we as people don't buy new cars, then used cars don't hit the market. And for a scale of numbers, almost about 35 million used cars are sold each and every year, whereas only 15 million new cars are sold each and every year. And basically that's a 2-to-1 ratio. So that means there are more used cars on the market than there are new. And the used car prices are dictated by the dealer. And so I say all of that confidently of as long as you are intelligent about how you want to buy your car and understand that even if you got 0% interest, which is the same as cash, you would still be paying anywhere upwards of $400 to $500, especially if the car is anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000. We have to be realistic about what these things are because this is the world that we live in. With that being said, you guys leave me a comment below and let me know what your relationship with car payments is. I know some of you don't believe in them and some of you do, but I would love to hear your relationship with them because I think it's very important. And with that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later.